Hello and welcome to today's Digital Dealer webinar. My name is Maria Burkell and I will be your host. Our webinar today is sponsored by IMN. Our subject is Email Marketing Best Practices. It's Not Your Father's Newsletter with Bobby Gaudreau, Vice President of Sales for IMN. The webinar audio today will be broadcasted through your computer speakers. All lines will be muted by me throughout the presentation. If you have any questions anytime during the presentation, please use the question section in the GoToWebinar task box. We will be holding a Q&A session at the end of the presentation, but don't hesitate to put any questions in there. Our moderator today is Maureen Condon. She's the editor for Dealer Communications, Dealer, and Digital Dealer magazine. Maureen?
Thank you, Maria, and welcome, everyone. I'd like to introduce our speaker. It's Bobby Gaudreau. He's Vice President of Sales for IMN. He brings over 15 years of sales and leadership experience in software and technology to his position there. Before that, Bobby was Regional Director of Sales for LivePerson, Inc., a provider of online engagement solutions for clients where he was responsible for Eastern U.S. sales and Canadian sales in the mid-market. Before that, Bobby worked for Autobase, Dominion Enterprises, a leading provider of CRM and marketing solutions. He worked there in a variety of sales and marketing positions. Bobby also worked for eLateral Limited, a UK-based variable data marketing company. Bobby received his BS from Keene State College and MBA from Northeastern University, and he is currently a Master of Science candidate at Boston College. Bobby is an avid runner and cyclist who has completed the Pan Mass Challenge, the Harpoon B2B, and over 15 marathons. He is currently a member of the McCourt Foundation Marathon team. Bobby, would you like to begin?
Thank you. Sorry about that. So yeah, thanks a lot. One other thing I wanted to mention too is the first job that I had out of college was I worked in a dealership. I've spent time on both sides, so I've spent time as a vendor selling into dealerships, but I've also spent time working on the showroom floor. I spent time in the F&I office, and I spent time setting up BDC solutions as well. We can talk about, so there's going to be 6 key points that I'm going to cover throughout this presentation. The first thing is going to be why newsletters are important. So why newsletters are important. Then we're going to talk a little bit about challenges in creating an effective newsletter. We're going to spend some time talking about content to keep readers engaged, how to extend the reach of your newsletter, and then also identify when buyers are in market. And then we're also going to spend some time on really measuring the success and analyze the behavior. So really kind of bucket these things into 3 groups: is understanding, why do this in the first place? Why look at newsletters? Why look at email marketing as a part of your marketing mix? And if you're going to do it, let's talk about how to do it well, and then how to justify the investment. So we'll move on to the next slide. So why email newsletters? I mean, to really start off is really it's a single best cost-effective tool to keep customers and prospects engaged. And from the dealership perspective, from your marketing perspective, and from your brand perspective, it's one of the single best ways to keep you top of mind, to keep your dealership top of mind, keep your group top of mind, and keep the products and services that you're trying to sell top of mind. And what's challenging about it is to think about it, as what we want as consumers. And we're kind of always caught in this paradox, especially now is an appropriate time to bring it up because it's the holiday season and we're probably online researching some gifts that we're going to buy people, or we're buying them online. And, we may be at one moment in time, eating lunch in front of our computer, doing stuff online, checking our email, and getting inundated from people trying to sell us stuff. And then we turn around and we create a campaign where we want to get people to come buy all of our stuff. So we're always kind of caught between these 2 parallel things at the same time. But it really comes down to what do we want? What do you want as a consumer? And how do you want to pass that along to your potential customers and prospects? And I like to boil it down to, we don't want to be spoon-fed. We don't want anyone to shove anything down our throat, and we ultimately want to be at a spot where we feel like we're getting that one-to-one relationship with the people we're going to do business with. And it's not easy. It's hard. Two analogies I always like to talk about when I've given a similar presentation in front of groups where it's live, and I'll ask people to raise their hand, and I'll say, who in this room uses a dry cleaner or gets their hair cut? And it's usually a safe bet that at least everyone will raise their hand on one or both of those things. And I'll say, keep your hand up if you've moved someplace that's in the close proximity within the past 3 to 5 years. And then, usually, half of the room will keep their hand up. And then I'll say, now keep your hand up if you'll go out of your way to go back to your original dry cleaner or go back to the person who's been, cutting your hair for a number of years. And, people usually laugh because we've all been there. And and that's the key. That's where we want to get, is to have those types of relationships with our customers where they go out of their way to come back and do business, whether it's to buy a car or I'm now going to drive by the 3 other dealerships to go get my oil changed or go get regular service done back at your dealership. And a newsletter is a place where you can, in midstream, start the conversation and keep those conversations going and keep things top of mind. Okay? So as we kind of move on, there's challenges, and in not even so much challenges today. These are challenges that I would encourage you to kind of always ask yourself to keep your programs honest. And because the answers to these change, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But one is, how do I engage my readers? I'm going to spend a few minutes, probably most of the amount of time, talking about engagement because it's so important. But how do I extend the reach of the newsletter? So we'll talk a little bit later on about social. But if we were having this presentation 2 or 3 years ago, social might not even be in the mix. Today, it's the center point of almost everything. How do I know when readers are in the market to buy? So it's one thing to send email out. It's one thing to say, hey, I think this got to the inbox. But ultimately, everything has an opportunity cost. And if you're going to be spending money and spending time on a newsletter or on a marketing campaign, that's money or time that you're not spending on doing something else. So it's critical that at the end of the month or the end of the quarter or the end of the year, you can justify that time and cost expense. So ultimately, it's what are you generating in terms of sales and increased revenue from service. And then that all ties back into, how do I measure the success of my newsletter? So again, the key point here is every program, everything you do has an opportunity cost, and how can we help figure out if that's the best place to spend your time and money. So as we move on, is the first thing I want to talk about is engaging content. So in marketing in general, and we've been in this space, IMN has been in this space of sending out newsletters now for a little over a decade. And initially it was, hey, this is an interesting thing to do. We talked a lot about open rates. There's still things we look at now, but open rates are kind of really being surpassed by engagement. Engagement is the holy grail. When you have engagement, it opens the door to pretty much everything else that you want to get accomplished. It opens up the door to revenue. It opens up the door to upsell. It opens up the door to cross-sell. It opens up the door to start and keep that conversation with your customers and keep them engaged. Because there's a lot of noise out there. And there's, forget about just newsletters you might be sending out to customers. You're competing against their work email. You're competing against things that other marketers are sending out. So we've got a finite amount of time that we're going to devote to reading stuff. So if you can get that engagement month over month, week over week, quarter over quarter, you've got the right recipe. And then the second thing is talking about custom content. And that really, in dynamic custom content, that's really the second holy grail to get to. But you can't start talking about custom content. You can't start talking about how you're going to utilize this until you have that engagement and you can understand what people are doing. So, again, and I'll use this as a reference point a lot through the rest of the conversation, is Amazon and Netflix. I'll assume that most of the participants on this call probably have an account with one or both of those companies. And it's probably hard to imagine going to Amazon.com now and not having recommendations of music or movies, or the same thing with Netflix. But you need to have a track record with those companies. They need to understand what your interest levels are before they can start making those recommendations. So There's different types of things that I want to talk about. So we've got there's exclusive content. There's things like video, special events, service coupons, new and pre-owned specials, service tips, local and lifestyle content. So I'll touch a little bit on all of these, but to take a step back, at IMN we really view the newsletter as a magazine, and we set it up such that there's a little something for everybody. So an analogy is it's kind of getting your weekly subscription to Sports Illustrated versus getting a weekly subscription to Golf Digest. So Sports Illustrated is going to touch on a lot of different sports. Golf Digest is obviously focusing on one. So we want the newsletter to touch on a bunch of things, and the key is to keep it consistent and allow people to self-select. So here's 3 of the 4 key ingredients that typically go into our newsletter. So the first thing over on the left-hand corner, we'll put in, so the first thing is going to be vehicle and service articles. So these are really the feature articles that you have experience with in regular magazines. This is what allows you to differentiate yourself from other brands. This is speaking directly to your consumers and prospective customers. But then we surround that with other relevant content. So if somebody just bought a car from you or they just had their car serviced, the last thing they want to do is be inundated with new lease specials and new oil change coupons. It almost becomes disingenuous, and people are going to tune out, and you're going to lose that engagement. But if you take that very important information and surround it with other relevant content, that's the right recipe. So we always put in what we call destination content, and that's going to be specific to the geolocation of where a dealership is located. So you're a dealership in Missouri. There's going to be things that are, if you're in Missouri, you don't care about a fair in Woodstock, Vermont. Or if you're in Missouri, you don't care about apple picking in Washington State. So we try to write things that are going to be specific to that geographic location. Then we also put in lifestyle, entertainment, general interest articles that will be specific to the time of year. So in the fall, there may be an article in there about carving pumpkins. In the wintertime, there's a health article in there about getting a flu shot and staying healthy during when people are typically getting colds. There's an idea here in freelance opportunities to earn holiday cash. So again, the idea here is we're taking the sales and marketing stuff that's so important to your message, but creating a soft sell with other relevant content that's frankly professionally written and interesting, so people will actually read it once, they'll read it twice, they'll continue to read it. The fourth thing is we make it very easy, and we want to make it very easy to start differentiate yourself from the other dealers down the street. Actually, if you can just go back one more slide, sorry. To differentiate yourself from the other stores down the street. So here's some stuff that actually Mini populated into the newsletter on special APR financing. And then you can go one step further, and now if you're a Mini dealership with 3 other stores in your zone, you can add things in that differentiate you from the other competitors down the street. So again, just to recap what those four things are, is vehicle and service articles, which is ultimately what we're talking about, because you need to sell and you need to service to keep the lights on. But to keep people coming back is you put that relevant content in there. So you put destination in there to identify where your geolocation is. You put in lifestyle information to make it relevant. And you put in dealer-specific information to differentiate yourself from the competition. So a great example is on the next slide. So a great example, and we'll weave in some things that are non-auto specific, just from a different perspective. But in terms of engaging content, it comes back to my example earlier of being rewarded. I drive sometimes 30 minutes out of my way to my old dry cleaner, and I like the guy, but I don't have to tell him how to do my shirts, and if there's a button that falls off, he fixes the button, and so I'm rewarded for kind of going out of my way. It's the same thing online, and so here's an idea for Groupon. If I go in, I'm in Boston, and I sign up for the friends and family stuff. This is exclusive to me, so it's that opportunity cost. I'm spending time on the Groupon site. I'm signing up for stuff. I'm referring things to my friends and family, and as a result, I'm rewarded for that. A great example, I don't have the slide for it, but a great example, we have a customer down in Texas, Lone Star Chevrolet, one of the biggest Chevy stores in the country. They will typically put in the newsletter a survey every month, and sometimes people can fill this out to win something. Sometimes you get the bragging rights on answering the question first. Sometimes you get the bragging rights of answering the question correctly. But the idea is that it gets people back to the newsletter. They stay on the newsletter. They answer this survey or they answer the question. But then they've got to come back the next month to see what the answer was or to see who won. And it's a consistent thing that they do. So it's engaging, it's exclusive. I'm rewarding for taking the time or spending the money to do business or spend time with you or on your site or what you're delivering to me. Okay? And then the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about starting to extend the reach, right? So I mentioned it before that, you know, social may have been mentioned in a few conversations a couple years ago. And now you can't even have a conversation about online marketing without social coming up probably within the first 5 minutes. So hopefully everything I'm going to talk about over the next couple minutes isn't going to be you know, brand new stuff for anybody, but the idea here is in newsletters, in your online marketing, is make it easy to extend the reach. Is make it easy to push articles or push coupons or push videos, push anything that you're doing so people can share that on their social networks, whether it's on Twitter or putting it on their Facebook page. I mean, you know, we see a lot of dealerships right now will take pictures of people when they buy the cars and put those on their Facebook pages. So same idea. The best practices with email newsletter marketing is make sure that you've got all those social buttons on there to share it. So as we move on, is make it easy. Next slide, please. In this example here, we've got you know, video that's embedded into the newsletter, and we make it very easy and obvious on where I can push that video or push that newsletter to a friend of mine. Just where I could put it up on Facebook, I could send it directly to them. And then I make it very easy for me if I receive this. Maybe I haven't ever visited the dealership yet, but now I've seen this newsletter on Facebook, and I say, huh, that's interesting. I think I'm going to sign up for it. Make it very easy to do that. And we track that every month, and we show customers, here's how many new people you got into your you know, into your database through this. Now, I don't want to set an expectation that it's going to be hundreds and thousands of people, but it's a handful of people. But these are very important people because they've self-selected to get into your database. They've said, hey, you didn't have a relationship with me before, and I want to hear from you now moving forward. So it's important. And then another example that we'll look here is in terms of rewarding people in the social sharing. So on this Crocs example, someone that signs up for their newsletter gets a discount the next time they go and buy a pair of Crocs. And then there's 3 examples here on a Twitter feed. If people sign up for some email campaigns, here's some different ways that they're rewarding them for doing that. It's, you know, so it's using your social network to get people to sign up for your other marketing and your email newsletters. And it keeps that engagement. It keeps people coming. It keeps people coming back. Now I'm going to shift gears a little bit right now and talk a little bit about, you know, behavior and understanding. So this all comes down to this. All sounds great. We're doing these email newsletters. We're doing these campaigns, but you know, when it comes to the end of the month and we say, hey, here's all the bills I'm writing out. I'm writing a bill for this. Am I getting my return on it? Let's talk about some ways that we take a look at that. So using behavior also can be another way to reward customers. Again, I'm going to go back to that Amazon and Netflix example. Is we expect it now. We assume that when we go to the site, they're going to have the recommendations of movies that they think I might like or books that I think that I may like. But I want to look at and explore a couple examples. Some of them are reactive examples, and some of them are proactive examples. So the first one here is going to be an example in the newsletter. So what we recommend as a best practice, and all of the articles that are sales and service related, we embed in there what we call as a buy signal. And because the newsletters are delivered over email, and in essence they're microsites, we know that if a ABC dealership has 1,000 or 10,000 email addresses, we know who those 10,000 people are, and it's tracked back to those individual people. So when we embed this buy signal, so schedule my test drive or schedule a service appointment, there's no need to fill out any information. Someone can just click on it, and it will push that lead into the CRM system or into an internet lead management system or into a service scheduler. Now again, similar to getting more email addresses through social sharing, I don't want to set an expectation that you're going to be inundated with leads, but you will get a lot of leads, and these will, what we a lot of times hear from our customers is these are some of the best leads that they get throughout the course of a month. Because if you think about it, it's analogous to a BBAC customer. These are people that you have some kind of relationship with because you have their email address somehow. They're either a customer or they're a prospect at some point in time. And you've now pushed a newsletter out to them. They've taken the time to open it up. They've now taken the time to open up an article or look at a service coupon or read an article about service. And then they've even taken the fourth step to actually click on this and say, hey, I'm interested in a test drive, or I want to service a schedule appointment. So we provide the ability to track that, and you'll have the ability to look back on that and really and leverage these opportunities that are coming in, because this is the BBAC customer that's walking in on a Sunday after doing all of his and her rounds of shopping the day before on Saturday. And then in terms of from an analytics standpoint, so the next slide we'll take a look at understanding the performance. And I was in California yesterday meeting with a dealership when we were talking about reporting, and I heard it for, I don't know, probably the millionth time, is paralysis by analysis. And everyone has reporting, and everyone has interesting reporting and slick reporting. We do as well, but we try to look at rear view mirror stuff and forward thinking. So the rear view mirror allows you to justify your expense. So understanding the traffic coming back to your website, understanding traffic back into profit centers, and then but also benchmarking yourself against peers. So if you happen to be a Hyundai store, how are you competing? How are you doing against other Hyundai stores that have a similar product? How are you doing against other Hyundai stores in your market? But also a best practice is starting to use behavior to start looking forward and start influencing sales and start influencing behavior. And we're starting to spend a lot of time now on looking at the behavior in the newsletters to then drive behavior from a transactional standpoint. So here I'm going to show you a couple of examples of utilizing that. So on the one on the left-hand corner, this is a good example of what we would here call as a follow-up. So envision a newsletter goes out to ABC Toyota, and they have 10,000 people in their database. And let's say 3,000 people open up the newsletter in a particular month, and out of those 3,000 people, 500 people read this article about the RAV4 that was in there. So I think it's easy to agree that there's some ember of a thought in their mind. There's something interesting about the RAV4. Otherwise, these 300 people wouldn't have taken the time to open up the newsletter and read that article on the RAV4. And the best practice here is we now have the information on who those 300 people are. We've got name, email address, and now create and turn around a campaign to those people with a specific call to action that we know is going to be interesting to them, and then track that. So again, it's on one end, it seems, wow, this is convenient that I happen to just read this article on a Toyota RAV4, and lo and behold, 2 days later, there's a coupon or there's some kind of a call to action for me to come in and buy one. But that's where we start to see a lot of results. And in other companies and other industries are starting to do the same thing. So outside of this is a great example with TripAdvisor. So we're based here in just outside of Boston, Massachusetts, but maybe I'm going to go up to Portsmouth, New Hampshire on the water with my wife for the weekend. for our anniversary, so I start to research some hotels in Portsmouth, and so TripAdvisor is watching what I'm doing, and subsequently they will start making recommendations. So they now know I'm going to be staying in Portsmouth, so now they'll give me some recommendations or some suggestions in terms of some activities to do, some restaurants to eat at. Maybe there's an event going on that I'd be interested in. So again, it's doing it tastefully and it's doing it appropriately. But again, there's a level of interest on my standpoint, so I will probably appreciate getting those things sent to me. Another great example, there's not the example on the slide here, but mentioned before, I happen to like running, and I am on the Nike Plus website, so I go there sometimes a couple times a day to go in and kind of look at some of my past runs and to log runs that I'm doing. But don't think for a second that Nike isn't watching all of that, and that they understand how often I'm on the site. They know I live in Boston, Massachusetts, so they know it's freezing cold out right now. So it's not a coincidence that campaigns and emails, and I'm subscribed to a Nike newsletter, information that I get from them is appropriate to me and my activities and how I spend time with Nike, as well as where I geographically live. So in December, they're not going to send me, a coupon for, 20% off shorts. But in the spring, they will do that. Okay? So another great example, and again, with newsletters and with email marketing, is using behavior and understanding what people have done. So this is an example with JetBlue. So I may have just gone on a flight with JetBlue, and then they'll send me something out for a review solicitation for me to go fill this out, and it may wind up on Yelp or any of the places that they point me to. So I know most dealerships are very, very focused right now on their reputation. They're very, very focused on review solicitation. So, placing the opportunity to fill this stuff out in the newsletter, placing this stuff within your social media is extremely important. But also, seeing the behavior of what people are doing, and when they make a financial transaction, whether they bought a car or they just had their car done in service, is using that to trigger reviews and trigger stuff to influence your reputation management is vital. Again, another example is I travel a lot, and I just got back late last night, and in my inbox this morning, I had a review from the Hilton hotels about how my stay was at the Hilton by the John Wayne Airport in Orange County, and I filled it out because I'll give an endorsement to that hotel, which is one of the nicest hotels I stay at, and they have one of the best breakfasts. But I had a very good experience there, and I filled that out. So we talked about a bunch of things today. So we talked about why email newsletters are important. They're important to the overall marketing effort. So there's going to be a number of things that are going to be part of your marketing arsenal, but it's the newsletter, I like to say, is that consistent thing that goes out every month, and it helps to drive the one-off campaigns that you need to do. It helps to drive some of the service stuff that you're going to do because you have all of that data in there. We talked a little bit about the challenges in creating an effective newsletter, and the questions that you want to ask yourself is, how do I keep readers engaged? How do I continuously extend the reach of my newsletter? How do I know when readers are in the market, and understanding and using behavior? And using behavior and analytics not to just justify your cost or have another spreadsheet that sits on your desk, but to use behavior to make decisions and market smarter and market more effectively. We talked about really measuring or taking data and using that to influence social, whether that's increasing the reach of your social or also improving your reputation and getting people to fill out more reviews. So, with that said, that really wraps up my part of the presentation. And just wanted to point out that we're doing this in conjunction with Marketing Sherpa. There's a book that's coming out. It's an in-depth marketing handbook that's going to have a lot of use cases in it, a number of real-life examples, some strategies. So for participating in the call today. This is something that you'll get a copy of this book. So we appreciate that. So to my point before, is you spent the time listening to this, so you're rewarded. So you can come up with similar strategies for your customers. So I guess with that, we'll talk about some, or see if there's some questions that have come in throughout this.
It asks, what content can I add to make my newsletter stand out more to readers?
So what content can I add to make to make the newsletter stand out more to readers? Again, I think it comes back to really is having that good mix of content. Again, I'm a big fan of analogies, and as I mentioned, a couple times I travel a lot, so I'm in airports a lot, and I'll stop in at the Hudson newsstand, right? And there's probably 100 magazines on those racks that I could buy. And I would imagine these magazines probably spend more time figuring out what they're going to put on the cover of the magazines to get people to pick them up and flip through them to potentially buy them than they do on actually writing the actual content that goes in there sometimes. But it really needs to be a mix of things. So, you certainly want to have information in there about the products and services that you sell. But you want to have things in there that are going to be interesting, that you paint your customer base with a broad brush across their interests. So having things that are going to be relevant to the community that you're in, having things that are going to be relevant to the time of year. And a lot of times I'll be in front of customers and they'll say, oh, well, that's all fluff. That's all, who cares about that you wrote an article in there about Justin Bieber, or who cares that there's an article in there about, carving a pumpkin at Halloween. But the fact of the matter is, that's why people will allow you to continue to send that month over month. Because if you just hammer them over and over again with sales and service specials and coupons, that becomes disingenuous. So, you'll find the mix that works, but it's a combination of the stuff about the dealership, of the products that you sell, and then, really kind of geographically, and then, kind of what's some general interest things out there.
Okay, we have another question here. How can I tell who opens my email or if it gets delivered or not?
So again, a good question there. So in terms of how we're set up, as I mentioned before, all the newsletters are sent as a microsite. So in essence, it's a website. So we have the ability to track back everything that's going on. To put it in perspective, as a company, we send out just about 30 million emails a month on behalf of all of our auto clients. And as a company, we'll send out close to 1 billion emails every year. So, underneath all of this stuff at our heart is it's really a data company. So we want to be able to not only understand who opened up the newsletter, but what they're doing once they opened it. How many times have they looked at a particular article? How many times has that article allowed them to go back to the dealership's website and into a specific profit center of the website? And then from a deliverability standpoint as well, is we're constantly testing things that we're sending out. So you can imagine if we're sending out 30 million emails a month, we want to make sure that they're being delivered. So we have strategies in place where we have test accounts with all the major ISPs. So we're sending things in there and we're making sure that they're delivered. And when issues arise, and believe me, they do, we're able to react very quickly to address those issues that make sure that our customers' emails are getting delivered.
Okay, thanks, Bobby. Next question we have here. What was the Chevrolet dealership you stated that was one of the largest in the nation that did a poll every month in their newsletter? I'd like to take a look at it.
Yeah. It's Lone Star Chevrolet, just outside of Houston in Texas. They're part of Sonic Automotive, and I mean they do. We've got lots of great customers, but Lone Star, they do a phenomenal job. I think they were actually Joe Healy, who runs their internet department there, was just recently on the cover of your magazine.
Yes, he was. Great interview with him. We have a question from Sheila here. How important is placement of each article to the overall open rate and further engagement for the newsletter?
Yeah, that's a great. I mean, that's a great question. It's a great question with not really an exact answer to it, and I guess the answer is it depends. I think I would answer it first this way: is the most important thing is to make it consistent. So, for example, if you decide that you want to put in service coupons into your newsletter, and you decide you want to do three every month and put them in the same spot. If you're going to do a feature on what your dealership is doing in the community, put that in the same spot. Now, we do spend a lot of time, looking at placement and seeing where open rates are. I mean, naturally, things above the fold, are going to get looked at and likely clicked on more. So, out of the gate, I would certainly recommend, putting the most prominent things above the fold where you want to get people's attention, and then within a couple of months of analyzing that and looking at open rates and what people are clicking on, then we can make some decisions and adjust as necessary. But the real key thing is keep it consistent. Keep it consistent.
Okay, we have a question here from Joel. It says, what are the average open rates and bounce rates on automotive newsletters?
Yep. So again, speaking from our standpoint, the open rates. The open rates will vary, and I would say the swing is they're all in the double digits, but I would say the swing is the 10 to 11% up to 20%, and again is some domestics, some cars may be on the lower end of that, where if you're a real enthusiast brand, so you're a BMW store that has a whole M shop, and you're in Southern California. And you do a lot of, you put in a lot of custom content into the newsletter, those open rates are, sometimes 20% plus. But again, it's understanding, everything's about expectations. And so it's understanding, here's the brand that you sell, here's the geolocation that you are in, and here's what your open rate should be, and let's make sure that you're performing on that. So it's not realistic to compare, a Ford store with 200,000 email addresses to that's frankly doing a heck of a job and selling a lot of cars every month, to a Porsche dealership that may have 20,000 email addresses. And in terms of opt-out rates, I think that's really important, and because the opt-out rates mean that people are allowing you to send that to them every month. Now, they may not open it every month, but they're not saying, hey, you know what, this is so uninteresting to me, or you have offended me, or you are it's disingenuous, I don't want to see this anymore. What we've seen, and we've been doing this now for over a decade, as I mentioned, we're sending out over 30 million emails a month. The opt-out rates are less than 1%, and that's a key stat. And then on top of that is starting to understand the engagement rates, and that's something that we're frankly getting our arms around right now.
Thanks, Bobby. We have another question here. It says, my newsletter name is the Buckman Buzz. Is it best to use this as the subject every time I send it out, or should I change the subject with every email?
That's a good question. I think I had, so my email address is right up there, and I think there's some stuff that I can send you that I've read with kind of varying opinions on all of that, but there's certainly there's nothing in that title that would, I think, raise any red flags. But it is good to to change the subject line around. But when you have the consistency on the newsletter, it's good. When you're doing some different follow-up campaigns out of the newsletter, adjusting the subject lines is often a good idea.
Okay, thanks, Bobby. We have a question from Britta. Would it also be possible to get a list of luxury dealers that have strong newsletters?
Oh, yeah, sure, absolutely.
Okay, great. And as an auto group with 9 brands under our dealership umbrella, what is your take on email marketing to our customers as D. Patrick as a whole versus D. Patrick Audi or D. Patrick Ford. Our thoughts are our customers might have a Honda and a BMW in their garage, but we want to hit both.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's one that we get asked a lot. So I guess let me answer that kind of in a couple different ways, because there's a number of different ways to look at that. So it's ultimately, if you've got the dealership group, I would imagine that you want to really, prominently say, hey, this is our dealership group, and you want everybody to know that. And you're probably right that most households are going to have, 2 or 3 cars in the household, and they're probably not all the same. And you want to let people know that, hey, if I currently own a BMW from you, that, my son just turned 16. He didn't. My son just turned 3, but when my son turned 16, and frankly, I don't want to go buy him a BMW, but I think I'll buy him a Honda. It's good to know that you've got that car there. So you want to make sure that you're prominently displaying that. So I think that was in the question. So the way that we consult our large dealership groups as a best practice is, within the masthead, to the degree that you can within your OEM branding guidelines, is you have your group brand, but then along the sides, down on some of the links, is you can identify, here's other dealerships that are in the group. But when you actually get into the meat of the newsletter itself, we strongly recommend that you stick with those brands. So if you had 9 stores and they were all completely different stores, I would recommend that you would have 9 individual newsletters. And I mean, let me just point out the fact that, I'm the sales guy, so it sounds like, well, of course he's saying that because you want him to buy 9 newsletters, which is true. But the fact of the matter is we've done this every which way you can imagine. And what we know is if you are if I went and bought a Ford, I specifically bought a Ford because I didn't want to buy a Toyota truck. Or, I bought my BMW, and I'm proud of the fact that I can drive my BMW, and I didn't buy another brand. And so if you have a newsletter that has some of these competing brands, in some cases they're, oil and water brands, then you will see some of your opt-out rates go up, which you don't want, and you'll see some of the open rates going down. The story I tell, which is a true story, it's kind of a little tongue-in-cheek, but my stepfather drives a Subaru, and they live in New Hampshire. My stepfather was a teacher in Vermont, and he's the guy that shakes his hand out the window when he sees a Hummer and he sees a big truck. And I always tell him that one of these days someone's going to run over his Subaru with their Hummer or their big truck. But if he was a customer and he was getting a Subaru newsletter, and there was content in there that he didn't appreciate, he would end up, likely opting out of that newsletter. So.
Thanks, Bobby. We have a question here from Larry. He says, what are some best practices for subject lines to get a better open rate on the emails?
So there's, probably one of the best things to do is with some A/B testing. So you can kind of take a list, cut it in half, and send half of the list one subject line, half of the list another subject line, and see if you see any major swings with open rates or opt-out rates. And as a company, as we go through and we're testing different things, if we see things that are getting caught up in spam folders or might trigger some things, we'll certainly give that feedback back to our customers. I mean, it was a number of years ago, but it's still a very relevant story. Is we had someone now this wasn't in the subject line, it was actually in the body of an email, but there was a line in there that said a lot or a little, and the spam filters picked up that or a little as oral, and they actually flagged that as like pornography, and the newsletters weren't getting through. So we just went back and made a couple adjustments to it, and then it was fine. So I mean, it's test.
Bobby, thank you. We have a question here from Michelle. How do you legally get subscribers to join your list without soliciting?
Ask. So on that is what you don't want to do is you don't want to go out and and just haphazardly buy a list. It's the same thing where you see a dealership, a single point store that has 50,000 likes, and 2 weeks ago they had 100. It's you don't want to buy it, because what will happen is that you could get a bunch of email addresses of people that have no interest in your products and services, and then you start sending those, and the ISPs notice, hey, here's this dealership that's got all these email addresses, and not one person opens it up. That's going to impact your deliverability rates down the road. So I mean, it really goes back to just the the old school blocking and tackling. Is when people are coming in for service, make sure that the service writers are asking for those email addresses. In the in the service lounge, put something in there where there's someone can put their email address in. People still have a lot of success on fill out the these cards and have a chance to win this flat screen TV. Making sure that your salespeople are putting email addresses into the CRM systems. And then we always recommend, our product is, the newsletter itself is designed to go out once a month, and we recommend on uploading the subscriber list every month. And oftentimes there might be a bunch of email addresses that have been sitting in an internet lead management system that's been idle for years, and someone still has to log into it. So again, there's a lot of different strategies, but it comes down to allowing people to opt in. Now, the other option, which is perfectly legal, which is to do an email append. So in the append service, you could take your DMS database and then scrub that against a list, and then match up those email addresses, and then a good append service will send out an email to say, hey, XYZ dealership that you've done business with or you have a relationship with has obtained your email address. They would like to communicate with you about upcoming events, promotions, et cetera, and so forth. And when that's done, there's two ways to look at it. There's an opt-in and then there's a double opt-in. So what most people do is if someone actually doesn't say no, that's an implied opt-in, and then that email address will go in. The double opt-in process is someone actually has to physically say yes. And different people have different viewpoints on the email append process. It's a service that we sell, so I stand behind it. I think it's a lot different. The automobile business is a lot different because if my car is in for service and I'm driving a loaner that's not as nice as my car, or I'm driving a rental, I want my car back. I want my car back as soon as possible, and I will give my dental records to the dealership for that information. So I think people are a little bit more receptive to have those email addresses through the email append process.
Thanks, Bobby. We have a question here from Melissa. She asks, how do you find engaging content?
Well, that's another great question. So I mean, again, and I hope I'm not coming off too much as the kind of on the sales end, but I would imagine obviously we sell these newsletters, so it's impossible for me not to kind of promote our product. But I mean that's what we do. So I mean you've got a couple of options. I mean you can partner with a company like us where we write that content. So to put it in perspective, we turn out every month about 150 plus unique articles every month, and then all those are archived for access later on. So that includes the vehicle content, the lifestyle content, the destination content, and we have an editorial director who's an auto journalist. I mean, about 2 months ago, Craig Fitzgerald, wrote a review on the Chevy Volt for the Boston Globe, and he was a former editor of Hemmings Motorsports. So I mean, that's what he does. He writes, and he specifically writes about cars. And he's got a team of people. Some of them are in-house, some of them are outsourced, that turn out these articles. So we maintain an editorial calendar. So at any given time, we can look out 3 or 4 months and we know what we're writing about. And I guess I'm trying to make the point that it's a lot of work. And your other options are, you can go out and you can kind of buy articles or try to use free articles, but that's not going to be as engaging. And there's like press releases out there that we, sometimes, frankly, we'll see, some other competitors or other companies, repurpose press releases. But someone might read that once or twice, but you're not going to come back and pull that magazine off the shelf again if it's not interesting. Or you can try to do it yourself. And if we ever have a client that says, hey, you know what, we think we're going to go try to do this on our own, usually within about a month or two, they come back. It's just, again, it's the opportunity cost. Is this something you want to try to manage an editorial calendar, try to manage getting this content out, want to keep things compliant with the OEM, write it in such a way that it's, someone's going to keep reading it month over month, or do you want to have someone else to do it? And we have the ability to spread this across, which is, why we can do it and continue to do it for 10 years. So.
Thanks, Bobby. Another question from Doug. How much is too much when it comes to email blasts?
Yeah, I love that. I love that question. It's the evolution of email marketing. And at one point in time, before I worked at IMN, I worked for a CRM company, and it was back then. It was hey, you got their email address, buy or die, right? And just email them until until the cows come home. And then one day, one dealer got blacklisted, and what the heck does this blacklist mean? And then he told a few other dealers, and everyone started freaking out. Now everyone is worrying, well, what is too much? And listen, it's again, there's not a magic. If there was a magic answer for it, I would be selling that, and I wouldn't be working at IMN. I mean, it's really, I think a lot of it is common sense. But one of the things that we've started to get into right now is we're starting to, we'll always have the newsletter is going to be the core of who we are. But now we're getting into doing our own kind of targeted marketing campaigns where we're taking behavioral information in the newsletter and we're mashing that up with transactional data to get very specific. And so what we found and what we're starting to see is, think about somebody as a funnel and where they are in their relationship with you, whether they just purchased a car and they have a 39-month lease, so they're not going to be in the market to buy a new car for another 3.5 years. So what you send them is going to be completely different than what you send somebody who's got, like myself, I've got 4 months left on my lease, so I'm kind of now actively starting to look for a car. So my threshold in terms of getting email, in terms of getting stuff, is a lot higher because I'm actively thinking about this. I'm actively in the market. And so the answer is it depends, and it depends on where that customer is. Now, if you don't have that, level of sophistication, or you're not partnered with somebody yet that can help you figure that out, my recommendation is what I would have said, 3 or 4 years ago when we really just did the newsletter is, the monthly newsletter is key because it's consistent. It goes out once a month at the same time, and then pick 1 or 2 things a month that you want to focus in on that, as opposed to just doing the blind email blast where we say, crap, it's the 12th and we're 50 cars behind where we probably should be. Let's get, any prospect that's been in the past 6 months who hasn't bought a car and blast something out. Rather than do that, is pick a smaller, more targeted segment, and you're going to see better results, and people are going to appreciate it more. So, and again, one last thing to that is we're starting to ourselves, we're starting to experiment with suppression lists, and to understand is, to identify when enough is enough, and be able to manage that on behalf of our customers, so it's one less thing you have to worry about.
Thanks, Bobby. We have one last comment here. It's not a question, but from Sheila. And she says, my digital partner used IMN for our newsletter, and I will attest to the fact that the articles they automatically populate into the newsletter are awesome and get huge opens.
Cool. Well, I don't know. I apologize. I don't know who Sheila is, but I promise I didn't ask her to say that. So thank you.
Well, that wraps it up then. And thanks, Bobby, for a great presentation. And We'd like to ask our listeners to please complete a short survey that will be delivered to you after you exit the webinar. And if you have any additional questions, please email our host, Maria Burkell. That's mburkell@dealer-communications.com. And do stay tuned for upcoming Digital Dealer webinars. You can find out what they are by going to www.ddwebinars.com.
Thank you, Bobby, and thank you, Maureen. And thank you, everyone else, for signing on. This concludes our webinar. Have a great day.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.